Welcome to Melanated and Spiritually Woke. I'm your host, Adorable Earth Angel. I'm a holistic wellness educator of 12 years with a master's in public health, energy healing of 7 years, and have been a Black female spiritual alchemist my whole life. Each week, we'll be sharing uplifting, spiritually focused wellness practices to best support you in regaining your personal power, or we'll have special guest interviews with the same intention. This show is in service to all those listening, and especially for folks of color who are seeking information to support their physical, mental, and emotional spiritual awakening. These practices will help you live your best life. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to Melanated and Spiritually Woke. I'm Adorable. And something really cool about having this platform, this show, is the fact that I'm an energy healer, and I'm basically just going to spend the time on this show giving away all of my secrets. A lot of people go to energy healers to find out more about, their energy, literally their energy, like why am I tired, or why do I have anxiety, or why I have depression, or like energetic blocks. Like you can have energy blocks as it relates to money or relationships. I just said money. I'm gonna say finance again, but like maybe finance is more along the lines of saving money, wealth, right? And so what's really fun and unique and fascinating is having an open live platform where I can actually talk very openly and freely about energy healing and aspects and ways in which we can kind of connect with energy healing in our daily lives in order to feel a sense of freedom, financial freedom, mental freedom, feeling physically free. Today, we're going to be kind of connecting with this thing called the spiritual awakening and how energy plays into that. I'll be weaving that through in today's conversation. So with the spiritual awakening, we hear that term. And that term kind of, for some people, can kind of be a turnoff, because when we hear spiritual awakening, it can kind of mean that we were sleeping and all of a sudden we woke up. It's not a coincidence that the name of the show is, there's spiritually woke in the show's title, because there's an aspect of waking up and staying up and committing every day to being a woke person. And when we think of woke, we think of this concept of maybe being woke to the true realities of what it means to be alive. It could be woke to like the justice concerns and the social concerns. This show is an interesting blend of definitely connecting to the social and the justice, but also connecting to spirituality and how those two actually are very much linked, they're very much linked. So we think about this awakening term again. Some of us kind of like cringe or like, oh, spiritual awakening. Does that mean like I'm going to just start drinking wheatgrass shots and I'm going to have my white clothes on and I'm going to have, I'm just going to be chanting with my prayer beads? And, spiritual awakening looks very different for every one of us. There are folks in our lives that you'd be surprised the type of spiritual practices they're into, and they're bus drivers, and they're lawyers, or they own the fish market down the street. There's ways in which spiritual awakening does not equate to you sitting on a mountaintop for 10 years and chanting. There's definitely like a formal way of being like a spiritual person. And then there's just being an urban, everyday householder who is having a spiritual awareness around their lives. So spiritually awakening means that there's an opportunity for you to awaken to a greater understanding of your purpose and your mission. Not only kind of the inspirational and visionary aspects of being a spiritually woke person. You're definitely more creative because you're flowing with spirit. You're letting spirit flow through you and you're channeling that. And you could be, again, channeling that through how you take care of your children. You could be channeling the best opportunities to connect with them and support them and grow with them. You could be channeling information about how to stand up in front of a room full of people and give a very eloquent conversation around something that you're really passionate on. You could use your spirituality as it relates to how you sell and market yourself, selling from an authentic place and being very spiritually grounded in that. You could channel into your relationships and your loved ones. So spirituality and spiritual awakening isn't this concept that's trying to promote people to become something that they're not, but it actually takes the life that you're already living and it just adds another layer of depth and joy and peace and gratitude. And so these concepts aren't, mutually exclusive. Like you can connect with both of them. You can both be here on this earth and be a spiritual being. That being said, how do you know when you're becoming a spiritually awakened person? Like, what does it look like? It could look like you tuning into this show. Like if you're attracted to this show and this conversation and quantum healing and crystals and astrology, if you find yourself just kind of flowing to those memes on Instagram or they're like spiritual memes, chances are there's something that your source energy is trying to tell you. And when I say the word source energy, I mean like this higher part of you. There's like this avatar, which is our physical bodies on this earth, having conversations, being, within the vibe of things. And then there's this higher version of us that's just kind of this connected to something bigger and bolder. And so when we think about the spiritual awakening, like kind of symptoms, like what happens to let me know that I'm actually going through a spiritual awakening process? It could be a number of things. I'm going to be sharing the top spiritual awakening symptoms that I've seen on my journey and with all the clients that I've worked with one-on-one and all of the people that I've taught in group courses. So I'm going to be speaking from a place of lived experience, and I'm going to really be focusing on what a spiritual awakening looks like and feels like, and the possible ways in which you can kind of navigate those challenges. So we're going to try to cram a lot into this show, and recognizing there'll be opportunities to talk about this in different angles later on. So not everything's going to be addressed. I'm just going to put that out there. I might forget things or leave some things off for the next show. So we're just trying to fit whatever we can into this moment. So let's start by talking about our physical body. So the physical body can undergo a lot of experiences when you're going through a spiritual awakening process. And when we think about spiritual awakening, it's not that you're just like, you have a spiritual awakening process and then you're spiritually woke forever. You're like, well, done with that. I'm spiritually woke forever now and forevermore. No. It's kind of like anything. It's like you don't just drink a cup of water and go, yep, I'm hydrated forever. Like you have to keep drinking water or you're going to get all gross and just kind of scaly and your hair is going to fall out. Yeah. So you have to drink water, and when it comes to spirituality, you definitely, there's a moment in time where you'll have a really, really big spiritual jolt. And that will open up a whole new chapter. And that's what spiritual awakening is. It's you walking through a new door, a new dimension. And what you'll notice is that there'll be more and more doors to walk through. But there's kind of almost like this kind of big bang moment for people once they start getting into all of this that they're acclimating to. It's kind of like the Matrix with Neo, where he takes either the red pill or the blue pill. And once he takes that pill, he's like, he's having some sort of awakening. But then further on in more movies, there's more levels that he has to upgrade to. And it's almost like with each movie, you could see that the scales, they get higher, the risks, they get riskier. And so there's him kind of leveling up in all these ways. And he goes through a physical metamorphosis that allows him to plug into these higher frequencies. So you'll find with spiritual awakening, there's a part within you that wants to change your diet. And so what you'll notice is that as you're going through a spiritual awakening, you might want to give up dairy, specifically dairy. And I'm specifically saying the word dairy because dairy, the vibration of dairy, talking about milk and ice cream and cheese and eggs and, all these things under that category, those things might not, for one, taste good anymore. When you're going through a spiritual awakening, that goat cheese might not be as tasty anymore. Or you might find that after you're ingesting those foods that you'll get sick. You'll see that. And a huge thing that dairy will do for someone who's going through a spiritual awakening is it'll create a lot of mucus. So you might get a sinus infection. There might be a lot of mucus. there might be a lot of inflammation in your body. And that's your body telling you, hey, guess what? I'm raising my vibration and these foods aren't in alignment with that. So you have to eat some foods that don't do that anymore. Please. Thank you. And so all of these other processed foods, a lot of fried foods, pretty much all meats, can kind of be challenging for someone as they're going through a spiritual awakening, because those foods have a denser vibration than fruits and vegetables and just what you would call like a vegan, vegetarian, plant-based diet. So that's one thing that you'll notice, is that you can't eat the same things anymore, and your physical body will maybe even reject it. I know when I was going through my spiritual process, I literally got food poisoning for meatloaf, and I felt like I was going to die. And it felt like it took I think a week for me to eat solids again. And I was just like, I'm good. And that was 12 years ago. So I was just like, I'm good. I'm not going to eat any more meat ever. And I felt better when I gave up meat. I just felt energetically better. I felt lighter. And within that, there was space for me to kind of, have less inflammation in my body. And there was space for me to kind of move and be more flexible and just feel more light. And so that's the whole point of spiritual awakening, is that actually what this means is that your consciousness, your body, your mental body, your emotional body, everything is getting flooded with a lot of light. And you might kind of, as you hear me say that, get an intuitive hit like, oh yeah, I think that might be what's happening to me. So I can feel like physically also is that maybe you might be feeling dizzy or lightheaded sometimes. You're like, whoa, why am I getting all swoony and dizzy? That's a lot of light flooding into your body, coming into your vibration. And the light is going to be at a higher frequency than our dense bodies, the density of our molecules, right? And you're like, well, where is this light coming from? It's like, good question. So it's coming from source. It's coming from this higher frequency. And we each have a time in our life where it's time for us to go into a greater, lighter frequency. And so your body's like, cool, like you're getting flooded with light. These foods are in opposition to that light. And as you also feel that dizziness, you might kind of think, wow, I really am tired. So another thing that comes up as a symptom for spiritual awakening is very lethargic, very tired, very sleepy. You might find that you need to take naps. You might find that you have a lot of fatigue. A lot of people say they report having chronic fatigue when they're in these states of being. And energetically, what that also indicates, from my experience, is that what you're also undergoing is some deep downloads. And so downloads means that basically, you have within you DNA, we all do. And there's DNA that you don't need anymore. And there's DNA that needs to go. And so as you're going through a spiritual awakening, it's kind of cool, a little trippy, maybe a little woo for some people. But what this means is that your DNA is getting upgraded. So you think about that. I keep harping on nutrition because I have a background in nutrition. So I'm like, you eat healthy food. And it's like, that's helping with your DNA transforming. So your DNA is transforming. You're getting rid of, it's called junk DNA. I'm using quotation fingers as I say this, junk DNA, because it doesn't sound like a scientific term, but you have this junk DNA and your body's eliminating that junk DNA. And so you're kind of sleepy because that is a tiring process of having yourself clear out that energy. And then now there's new energy coming in. And it's like with anything, you have like your iPhone, or you'll have your Mac, or you'll have whatever type of, I'm a PC user myself. And something that happens often on my computer is that it always needs to download something. Or my phone always has a new download. And sometimes they'll say, could you restart the phone? And I'm like, oh yeah, I have to restart my phone every couple of days. We're similar. We're definitely not like an electronic, but we're similar because actually we are electronic. We're energy. We're energy within our body. And so if you think about it, excuse me, when you sleep and when you allow yourself to kind of meditate, what you're allowing is you're allowing yourself to get upgraded. You're allowing yourself to hit the reset button so that you're in a new operational system, that your systems are functioning at a higher frequency. So a physical thing that you, beyond feeling tired, is another thing you could feel is really wired. You have all this energy flowing in you and you're just like, whoa. And so the wired energy can kind of be expressed. Some people call it anxiety, actually. Anxiety can actually be a really great indicator of you having a spiritual awakening. And some might go, what? I thought spirituality was supposed to feel good. Why would I feel wired? It's like, well, it makes sense, doesn't it? If we're working with this concept called energy, if the energetics of your DNA is being deleted as new DNA that's higher vibrating is coming in, it's kind of like it's like you're a teenager. You know, teenagers are just going through all these growth spurts and it's like, whoa, what's going on with my body? But it's going on at a different frequency. It's going on at a different level for you because it's positioned within all aspects of your being. So not just your physical body, but your emotional body, which we're going to get into in a little bit. Your emotions, your mindset, your mind, your mental awareness, talk about that as well. But we're talking about this from the lens of spirituality. So you might be feeling wired, you might be feeling jittery. You might like wake up and by the time you get through an 8-hour work shift, you just feel like there's just a lot going on energetically. Because here's the thing. You're working an 8-hour work shift or you're doing work while your body is spiritually upgrading. That's like you trying to use your phone or use your laptop or computer when it's in between. It doesn't function as good. It needs space to do that. And so a huge part of what happens for people is that they report having a lot of anxiety at work, or even the opposite of that, depression, which is also, again, that reset button energy. I didn't link that before when I was talking about when you need to like sleep or you feel fatigue. Energetically, that could also correspond to depression. And so depression and anxiety are actually two great indicators of you going into a place of spiritual awakening because your body is getting completely transformed. Things are coming in, things are going out, things are being dissolved. And you're physically awake for all of this. You're aware of what's happening, but maybe you don't have the explanation for why things are starting to feel so weird. Once you have an understanding of the flow of this anxiety and the depression and being sleepy and all these kind of physical symptoms, and maybe you're getting sick from certain foods, with that awareness shifts the whole process. Because then you're like, oh, I see what's happening. And your attitude around what's happening completely changes the aspects of how the process moves going forth. That's why I'm actually doing this particular subject, because I know a lot of people out there are having spiritual awakenings. I know you are. And I can feel you as I do this, as I literally do this transmission right now. I can feel the people that need to hear this information. I want you to know that you're not crazy. I want you to know that you're not crazy, that this is natural and it is normal. And of course, there's no like textbook around like what this could be and what this looks like. And was really no one to prepare us for this part of life. But this is what's happening specifically on this planet right now. As we're post 2012, which was a huge spiritual awakening turning point in our Earth's history. And so we're on the other side of that. And what happens is a lot of the guides that were here to be spiritual awakening guides, we got awoken. I definitely place myself in that category as a guide. Like I proudly identify as a guide, maybe a spiritual Harriet Tubman, if I could. And just like, yeah, being like, so just getting to that place where we figured out, whoa, what is all this about? And then being with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients and having them share the same story. I'm like, wow, this is like, if I were to make this into a scientific questionnaire, I'm pretty sure I would find like the similar qualitative data where it would conclude that, yeah, like these are the top symptoms that we are finding. See, this is the scientific heady me coming out right now. I'm gonna put her back away for a second. So getting back to, so the physical components of this, and then now let's move on to mental. So mentally, what you might be finding is that there's just more awareness. You're just like aware. You're seeing things in the world in a different way. maybe you're literally clicking on buttons, or you're having conversations where you're finding all this synchronicity. You're just like, wasn't I just thinking that? And look, it's there right there. Or I would, like you're just having like your mental capacity is changing right before your eyes. For some people, actually mentally, what they're finding is a lot of mental confusion. See, that's the thing about these symptoms. You'll either be the one or the other. It's kind of like not in between, right? Either you're really confused or you feel really clear. And so the confusion part could be related to diet. Again, like if you're eating that dairy, the dairy is creating inflammation, and that's creating inflammation in your brain, which is then literally affecting your thought patterns. But also when it comes to the mind, what you're going to find is this need to actually unplug more. Less stimulation is more, right? So being less electronics, less communication, less email, the opportunity to be in nature, to let your mind actually just get like the ability to drain out all of the information that's coming through. Mentally, there's also the possibility of you having greater awareness. As you may go through your life, as your daily life, and you're driving around, and you might also see sacred geometry, a lot of numbers, like something that a lot of people see as they start to spiritually awake is they'll see triple numbers. So you might see 111 or 1111 or 555 or 888, or just these kind of triple numbers. These triple numbers are also like just, it's giving you confirmation that you're coming into more awareness around the fact that if we're to take that turn back to Neo in the Matrix, like that you're waking up from the Matrix, right? Like you're waking up from like this reality, like this reality is here, but 111's like, hey, don't forget, this is just also an illusion. 111. Stay woke, so it's kind of, I love when I see it all the time. Like I see 111, I see 888, and I'm just driving around. I see like, I'll look at my cell phone, it'll be 1111, and I'm like, oh, Spirit's just reminding me to stay woke. And it's also just helping me to just recognize that this reality that I'm processing in my mind is something that is malleable and is changing and advancing. So you might, as you come into your spiritual awakening, you'll see these kind of synchronicities in the world. Okay, moving right along. Let's talk about your emotional body. Oh my gosh, this was the hardest one for me because it was so devastatingly emotional. My spiritual awakening process, I was crying. I was having such a hard time because I wasn't actually raised to have emotions. I wasn't raised to express emotions. I wasn't raised that emotions were even like okay. So as a kid, I was like, whenever I had an emotional thing happen, I just had to figure that out. Like I didn't have parents that were like into that. And of course they weren't into it because my parents were told that they couldn't have emotions either. So, of course. So I think as melanated people, this one could be the toughest one. I mean, the mental health one could be challenging, right? Like when I mentioned, like the mental awareness and confusion of the mind. But I think like the emotional one, I think that's been my hardest struggle as a Black woman. It's just been like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling all these feelings and like what's going on. I just remember crying. If it wasn't every day, it had to be every other day. And I remember doing this for months on and off. And, I would say my spiritual awakening process, all in all, like the biggest bulk of it was about 5 years, from 2012 and then I guess 2000 and can't do math. So 5 years from 2012, I was in my spiritual awakening process at the height of it. I wouldn't say I plateaued right now. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be gearing up for another big awakening, but I would say right now I'm in a steady place with it. But the emotional part was so real, y'all. It was like crying and all these and deep crying. Like I'm crying from a place within my being that's like grief. And I'm like, wow, where is this grief coming from? And as I'm speaking, maybe some of you can relate to that, right? Some of you are like, that grief thing you're talking about, adorable. I got me that. And I'm like, I feel you. And I'm just wanting you to know that I'm reaching my hand out to you right now. I'm letting you know that grief, a lot of it's not yours. A lot of that grief that you're feeling is not yours. It's a part of the process. And it's like, I guess, like the not really the pretty, blissful, like namaste or gratitude, joy, blissed out version of spirit, but it's the other side of spirit that's real, which is that we are humans and we have emotions. And emotions and tears and blowing our nose, and it's kind of, it's purging. We're purging out. And if we don't do the emotional process of our spiritual journey, we don't cry and blow our nose and get that stuff out of us, then we're not actually allowing ourselves to transmute the energy that's trying to be transmuted. There's no such thing as a spiritual bypass, meaning that you can't just be like, all right, I'm just going to fall asleep and wake up and then this will be good, right? Like I'll be spiritually woke, right? It's like, no, it's not like that. Another analogy I like to give is like, when you're like a restaurant and you go to the restroom and you come back and your food's there, or like, you'll be in a car and it'll be like a road trip and you fall asleep and you wake up and you'll be there. This isn't like that. This isn't like that at all. It's like in order for you to really have a spiritual maturity in this lifetime, you have to be willing to allow yourself to go into that place where there's those tears and that depth and that pain is there. And the energetics of that we've named is trauma. We've named it as a society. We call it trauma. A lot of spiritual people call it shadow work, meaning that inner shadow, that those fractures, that depth. Because as you go into your spiritual awakening, all of that energy that's unprocessed comes up really quickly and intensely. And a huge part of what I found on my journey as I was going through my spiritual awakening is basically surviving myself. A lot of people speak to that. When I speak about 2012, I spoke about it on another show, and I was like, that was a time where a lot of people checked off the planet. They couldn't handle it. They were like, this is too intense. This feels horrible. I'm out of here. Peace. So it actually takes a lot of strength to go into your spiritual awakening and emerge the other side. It's like going through an eye of a needle, though. It's passing through some really intense emotions that you didn't know were humanly possible to feel. I'm speaking from full-blown experience. Just things that I had to survive energetically to be on the other side of it. It was so hard and it was so painful. And it was mine. It was my mother's. It was my ancestors. It was all of it. It was all in there. And it's still, it's still a process, But I definitely feel like I'm in a really healthy relationship as it relates to my emotions. And so I would let myself do that emotional work, and I would let myself cry, and I would let myself do some energy healing processes. One energy healing process, I had promised in the show that I would say things that would help you get through your spiritual awakening symptoms. So I'll just go back through, and in the time that we have together, I'll try to go over some supports for these 4 areas that I've mentioned: your mental health, your physical body, your emotional body, and then spirit, your spiritual connection, which is the thread throughout all of this, right? Spirit. So let's go back up to the physical body, and so that we're in order. So what you can do to support yourself, as I mentioned before, I would invite you right now to cut out dairy specifically. So cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk. I would invite you. There's so many alternative dairies. There's like Miyoko's. I want to give a shout out to Miyoko. She created this cashew cheese. I eat it all the time. It's delicious. You can get it at Trader Joe's. You can get almond milk. You can get hemp seed milk. Just trying different milks. There's like cashew ice cream. There's cheeses at different various vendors, various stores carry like pretty inexpensive vegan cheese. I just invite you to get off the dairy, because the dairy is going to be one of the number one things that's going to challenge your ability to fully expand into your physical body that needs to be clear. Your body needs to be so clear for this spiritual awakening. It's kind of like, if you were to want to do anything, like if you want to make a beautiful meal, but you have a dirty refrigerator, or you have a dirty pot, but you're trying to cook a meal. It's like you have to clean out that pot. And so you're wanting to keep your body clear and clean. And we've talked about it on another show about food. We're going to talk more about food because, I have a background in nutrition and I care about the energetics of food and how we interact with it and just support in that. It could be challenging when we have to change our diet. There's a lot of emotions in that. And so as you can see, everything's kind of interrelated. When I talk about our physical body, emotional eating comes up. Our emotional body comes up as we do the spiritual healing process. So another thing is mental awareness, right? So being mindful of giving yourself space, going into the woods. I already mentioned this, actually. I'm repeating myself. I'm sorry about that. So giving yourself mental space, making sure that you're getting adequate sleep, making sure you're drinking water that's helpful for the mind's process, and also just allowing the confusion to be there. It's okay to be confused. Just tell yourself that right now. It's okay that I don't know the answer. And just smile at yourself because it's okay to not know. Notice the sacred geometry, especially after this show. Like, I'm pretty sure if you hadn't been noticing 111 or 555 or 777, you're going to notice it now. You're going to be at the gym running on your treadmill. You're going to see 1111 or you're going to see 333. You're going to see these numbers everywhere. They're like on your news stations. They're everywhere. It's on the addresses of the addresses of businesses. It's trippy. So, and I'm going to close really quickly. I just want to say also your emotions and just honoring your emotions, honoring where you're at, and just recognizing that this too shall pass and that you are on one side of a door and that there's a whole new chapter of your life on the other side of all those tears. There's a whole new chapter of who you're here to be on the other side of those tears, and to get support from your community that feels safe to help you through this process. If you are experiencing the depression part of it or the anxiety part of it, I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to be here with you weekly to support you on your journey. And I'm going to be doing the best I can to give you the tips and tools that you need to tangibly help you out. I'm in service to you, y'all. And so if you just keep hanging in there with me, we're going to get through this together. And there's a lot of support for you, and you definitely can do this. You can handle and crush your spiritual awakening. Be gentle with yourself. One other last little tip I would give you is if you don't connect with this teacher, Abraham Hicks is a beautiful spiritual awakening teacher, law of attraction teacher. They're one of my major teachers, and I really, really appreciate them. So that little last thing at the end. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing to your time and energy to this moment. If you can, please share this video with friends and family who you think might benefit from this. We do this every single week at kcbzradio.com. So you can click on our past shows and see what we've been talking about. Sending you so much love. May you be happy, may you be peaceful, and may you be light.